And I Awesome. Just wanted to let everyone know, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Janelle and Oshie are awesome. They're willing to take any questions. We will address them at the end. So if you want to hold on to them, feel free. But if you want to pop them in the chat as well, we'll round them up and ask them at the end.
Thank you. So first and foremost, we want to let everyone know that it will be an interactive session where we will be asking everyone questions as well. So feel free to participate, whether it be throwing your answers in the chat, or if you want to speak out and unmute your mic. But starting off, we do have a little bit of an icebreaker question that we do want to ask to kind of get our brains going, kind of get our ideas, what we may have known about race-based trauma before this session. So the question essentially is, when we say race-based trauma, what comes to your mind? What is the first thing that kind of pops in your mind when the word race-based trauma come out? See discrimination a lot.
For me, automatically, I just think like straight to violence. Like that's like the first thing that I picture.
Violence. I see colorism in the chat as well. Interactions with us as a Black within racism, being denied opportunities. So there's a lot of things that play in denied access. These are all fantastic answers. And we're just gonna jump right in and, oh, let me not forget that, something that stays with you. Yeah. So essentially we wanna break down race-based trauma and looking at what trauma just generally actually means. And when we look at that, we can see that trauma is a lasting emotional response that often results from living through a distressing event, experiencing a traumatic event that can harm a person's safety, sense of self, and ability to regulate emotions and negative relationships. And when we add that race component to it, we now see that racial trauma is a reaction to experiences of racism, including violence or humiliation. You may also hear it referred to as race-based trauma or race-based traumatic stress. So all the answers that everyone kind of put in the chat were right on, and some of the answers that were spoken about. And it's really important to notice that unlike PTSD, race-based traumatic stress is not considered a mental health disorder, but rather a mental injury that can occur as a result of living within a racist system or experiencing events of racism. Now we're going to look at how it affects us. And when we see racial trauma, we see how it affects anyone who has experienced racism. And looking at that, we can see that racial trauma can lead to an increased risk of physical and mental health problems. Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun. Racial trauma affects anyone who's experienced racism. These experiences also don't have to be direct. So an example of this is sometimes when we're on the news and when we're reading the news or watching the news and we see things that are happening all over the world that are happening to other people of color, other Black individuals as well, and we see the traumatic things that they're going through, a lot of those indirect, if you want to say it like that, means of racism are also things that can affect us and now affect the way that we live out, affect the way that we walk out based off of the race-based trauma, where now in certain situations where we felt safe, we don't feel safe anymore because of things that we've heard through hearsay, through news, or experiences that others around us have also experienced as well. And now we're going to jump to how it affects us. When we look at racial trauma, it can lead to an increased risk of physical and mental health problems, emotional difficulties such as stress, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and can impact our daily function in school, work, or home in any of the capacities that you are in. An experience of race-based discrimination can have very negative psychological impacts on individuals and their wider communities. Basically, the people that we also interact with. And a lot of the times we don't really tend to think about it in that capacity, of the traumas that we go through are actually affecting the people that are around us, the people that we have close contact to, because now based off of situations that we may have seen or situations that we may have heard of or situations that we may have actually gone through ourselves, we are now weary in certain social settings. We are now bringing a certain behavior about ourselves when we're in certain social gatherings with our friends, because we want to be mindful of protecting ourselves. So that is a way where it can also affect the people, honestly, the closest to us. And when we look in some individuals, we can see prolonged instances of racism can lead to symptoms like those experienced in post-traumatic stress, and they can look like anger, they can look like depression, reoccurring thoughts of the event, physical reactions like headaches, chest pains, insomnia, hypervigilance, low self-esteem, and a mentality kind of distancing ourselves away from traumatic events as well, kind of having that overload of the situations that we may see, the situations that we may go through, and we don't want to actually engage in those situations anymore. We don't really want to hear about those situations because it tends to overload and give us the exact effects of PTSD. So we kind of move on to our next question, and it's kind of a fun one. And the question is, what would you describe as Blackness? So if we were to look at the word Blackness, how would you individually describe it? Resilience, versatility, power, these are all really good. Assigned by white people. Okay. The it factor, I like that. I'll wait a couple more seconds for a couple more if everyone wants to throw it in. But as a couple more maybe coming in, I think the greatest thing about everything that's said, everything that will be said, is the essence of Blackness is something that is unique to each and every single one of us. There are certain things that may be underlying and may fall through all of us, no matter where we come from, but a lot of the other things are things that are unique and bring out the individualism which is within Blackness. And this is kind of where we're going to dive in a little bit with trauma number one. So we, and Janelle and I, really wanted to focus in on a couple of different specific traumas, because we wanted to be able to talk from a place of certain instances and certain traumas that we've actually as individuals faced, because we felt we would be able to better leverage the idea of being able to heal through trauma by being able to talk through a couple of the things that we ourselves have gone through and found healing in, with a lot of the coping mechanisms that we're going to share a little bit later. But I do want to note and preface that these two traumas aren't the only traumas that are out there that Black individuals face, that there's many more. And even at the end of our session during the Q&A, if you feel comfortable enough sharing, and maybe even sharing how you've overcome some of these traumas that you've gone through, or how you're actively working on overcoming them, you can feel free to also chime in at the end of the Q&A. But the one that I am going to be tackling is kind of that essence of Black identity, and really looking at the idea and notion that Blackness is not a monolith. A lot of the times growing up and all of that stuff, I've had to deal with this on a larger level than I would like to. And that being said, is it really felt like, for myself growing up, I grew up and bounced around between my parents. My mother is Eastern European, and my father is Jamaican, born and raised. And I spent about 8 years with my mom, seeing my dad on the weekends. And then when I was 9, I actually transitioned to living just with my dad. And a lot of the differences really were shocking, but were almost the same experience where no matter the circumstance and no matter the context or environment, with family, I was never viewed as Black enough. And the things that I had done weren't considered, quote unquote, what Black people would do or how a Black person would identify. So jumping in, we have a really, really lovely quote that I wanted to share. And it goes like this. It says, if we say that being Black is only certain things, that leads to stereotypes, not only for other people, but for ourselves, that we can only be limited to these things. And it's by Dr. Anderson. And one of the things that I love so much about this quote is it shows, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, about the uniqueness of Blackness. And when we limit what Blackness is to a couple of things, or we end up creating stereotypes because we use notions as, oh, this is what Black people do, or this is what another group of people do. In essence, we're limiting ourselves in the greatness and the capacity that we can actually achieve. So kind of jumping into a couple of things. When we look at Black identity, after diving in and seeing a lot of the stuff, we really feel that there are 3 steps how we can kind of change this and really move away from Blackness as a monolith to Blackness as a great thing that people from different walks of life that identify as Black can view themselves as unique and still view themselves as being Black, and kind of working through that trauma of not feeling Black enough. And the first step that we would want to take is breaking down the Black people don't do this narrative. I know a lot of the times in some of the friendship groups that I have that that are people of color in this group, they will sometimes joke about certain activities or certain mannerisms not being Black, or that Black people don't do this. Like one of them, it came up recently, is a friend of ours went camping this summer, and they made a joke of like, haha, like that's crazy because Black people don't go camping. And being able to kind of break down these negative camping is a lot of fun, by the way. Like it is one of the best. I've enjoyed, portaging, like you're carrying like your backpack, all that. It's amazing. If you haven't tried it, you should. It's one of the funnest, isn't a word, but it is one of the greatest things that you can do. But breaking down those narratives are essential for us as individuals, and understanding that the language that we use is language that is essentially hurting ourselves when we say things like Black people don't do this, or when we say, oh, those actions or that type of music is for this certain demographic of people. We're limiting the potential that we all have in being able to do a lot of those things. And instead of suggesting what Blackness is and how it should be performed, I would actually suggest and advise people to ask, what do you notice? And really looking at a diverse Black community and seeing where everyone thrives, where they are able to find their niche. And I guarantee you'll find different things that aren't what society and what media would convey as Blackness. You'll find a various group of people that enjoy different things, that look different ways, that walk different ways, that dress different ways. You'll see a variety of uniqueness that comes in those communities when you take a step back, and instead of suggesting to others and friends and families what is the media portrayed version of what Blackness is, actually looking into communities and seeing how they operate, and some of the great things that they do will help us reshape this narrative of what Blackness actually is. And this helps us a lot, even just simply with critical thinking, and affirms what we already know in the potential of Black identity being limitless, that there's nothing that we can't do because of our skin color and because of these negative narratives that we allow kind of come in and control how we think and how we interact with others and how we interact with each other. And when we look at step number 2, as a Black person, understanding whatever you do is considered being Black. And this is one of the great things, but it also is, in essence, a double-edged sword. And really understanding that the way that we walk out there is going to be portrayed. The things that we enjoy, the things that we say, the things that we do, being able to live out that is being Black. So whether you like country music, whether you like R&B music, whether you like K-pop, J-pop, any of those things, Afrobeat, any of those things, being an individual that is Black, because you like those things doesn't make you any less Black. It actually still makes you Black. It makes you a Black person who enjoys the creativeness, the uniqueness of other things. So understanding that the things that you enjoy, the way that you talk, the way that you dress, those are all, if you're doing it as a person who would identify in the Black community, then those are things that you're doing in being considered being Black, and understanding as Black people that things that bring about our individuality are the same things that make us Black. And lastly, looking at step 3, don't be a problem. Avoid reinforcing Black stereotypes. And I know this can be one of the hardest things, because I find myself sometimes in this trap of reinforcing Black stereotypes, whether it's a joke with some of the friends that would also identify as Black. But even in those moments of making jokes, you're taking a step backwards instead of taking a step forward, or you're staying stagnant in this problem of understanding that when it comes to being Blackness, there's a bunch of unique things that make up being Black, and there isn't a set rule or a set list of 5 to 10 things that if you're Black, then you would check off all of these things. And being able to not be the problem is, I think, one of the most important steps in identifying this, because it allows us to actually make active change, and it allows us to look inside and see how we can help better the problem and help push this negative narrative out and be able to refill it and reinforce it with a positive narrative. And there's simple ways that we can go about doing that. Is obviously the simplicity of do not be a part of the problem. We shouldn't be telling people that that's not what Black people do, or the quote unquote go to of that's some like white people stuff. That we should be encouraging our individualism and be proud of the fact that we are not a monolith, and that we don't all look the same, dress the same, act the same, that we have all these unique individualities that make up Black culture. And that is the most exciting part. And even within a lot of that, we've kind of identified one of those traumas in being Black identity, in Black identity. And I know I talked a little bit about kind of facing that with a lot of family dynamics, kind of growing up with both, but a like really real example of me kind of struggling through a lot of this was I grew up really enjoying what you would consider, and for the lack of like conversation, I'm going to use it and air quote it so that we understand that like I'm not pushing this narrative, but I like enjoyed a lot of the white sports of like, I loved playing golf. I loved playing baseball. I loved going outside and playing road hockey with my friends in the wintertime. Like those are the things that I loved and I enjoyed. And I would do a lot of those things around a lot of my Black friends, and they would make fun of me for it. They would look at me, point, and be like, oh man, like, O'Shea, that's your white side coming out, like, and like kind of laugh at it as a joke. And it was like, oh, like this is weird. I don't understand why I'm getting kind of made fun of it for it. And this is where I went through a lot of self-doubt of my actual ethnicity, and questioning a lot of those things of, man, am I really Black? Because a lot of the people that would identify as Black are looking at me and going, oh, he's not really Black because he doesn't play the sports that we played. And this impacted me so much where I actually quit playing a lot of those sports. The only sport I actually continued to play was baseball. And I got into playing a lot of the quote unquote Black people sports. I got into playing basketball. I got into playing football. And I didn't really play these sports because I enjoyed them. I played them because I wanted this sort of acceptance of the people around me, whether they were Black or were of a different ethnicity, to acknowledge me as Black. And this was the way that I found that they would do that for me, because the other sports that I played, I was labeled as, oh, that's my white side. And then when I started to play these sports, the same friends and other people would also make jokes on the other end of, oh, O'Shea, this is the Black side of you coming out. Look at you playing all of these sports. And it took quite a bit of time, even into a little bit of my young adult life, of actually going through therapy sessions, of actually having a healthy group of older mentors that were Black, to kind of break down a lot of these narratives. And a lot of it started with just opening up and being able to have these conversations and have a healthy place where I could have these conversations about opening up what I viewed as Blackness, what Blackness actually was, the image of Blackness that was being pushed on me by friends, by family on both sides. And this is one of those things that I've seen has plagued myself in a lot of ways. These are one of the things that I see plague a lot of the students that come to our program, a lot of the students that I've had the opportunity of interacting with, and being able to kind of shape and lead to a better direction of really understanding that concept of Black identity and what we would do to help identify what Black is, and kind of breaking down those negative narratives of the quote unquote, that's what Black people do, or that's what white people do, or that's what X by X race does. So to kind of end off on a little bit of a lighter note before Janelle comes in and speaks about the next trauma, is just wanted to ask, what are some activities that you enjoy doing as Black individuals?
I like going to poetry shows, reading poetry, performing poetry, writing poetry.
Nice. I got drawing, poetry shows, watching movies, dancing, studying music, arts, painting, dancing. There's reading, skiing and snowboarding, research, skating. The great thing, love drawing, nature walks, and feel free to continue to put all of these activities that you enjoy doing in the chat. But one of the greatest things about this exercise and this question that we really wanted to drive home was just the diversity and the difference in each and every single one of us. And we all here for, I can't really see everybody, but I would hope I'm going to take the assumption here. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. But the awesome part about this is that as Black individuals, we see the diversity just in the chat of the different things that we all enjoy to do. And none of those things makes us more Black or makes us any less Black. And this is the greatest thing, and really the driving point that we really wanted to drive home in this trauma of embracing your uniqueness as a Black individual and being able to shine in that, and not being stuck kind of in that label that society or media creates of not being Black enough or doing quote unquote white people thing, but being able to understand that none of the activities, the things that you enjoy, the food that you enjoy, the music that you enjoy, none of those things strip away your Blackness or what makes you Black. In fact, it enhances it, and it makes your Blackness unique and something that only you can bring differently to this world to be able to change it and better it for, obviously, the better.
Okay, thank you, O'Shea. So our next trauma that we'll be talking about is harmful beauty standards and how it affects the Black community. So for one of my questions, I want to ask you guys, what are some typical beauty standards that we notice in our society today?
The BBL, you know, super curvy body type.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
BBL epidemic right now.
there's a lot of standards like regarding like lightness, like skin bleaching and being closer to white and stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yep, that colorism piece. Agree. Hairstyles. I saw someone say hairstyles in the chat. Oh, sorry, my light is on a timer, so it keeps going off. But I'm gonna try to keep moving so it doesn't turn off on me again. But yes, black women are always young, light skinned, better, prettier. Agreed. Long hair is great. Short hair is, or bald is considered bad. To have a thin nose is a beauty standard. Yes. So these are all beauty standards that we notice in today's society. And today we're going to be talking about the trauma and how that can be harmful to us as Black people. So when we talk about beauty standards, I'm speaking specifically on the Eurocentric beauty standards that our society has created over the years. So when we speak about a Eurocentric beauty standard, that refers to beauty standards that favor European features, such as big blue eyes, small noses, straight hair, lighter skin, all things that don't really encompass a lot of other different cultures or other different races, right? Other than the European type look. So I have here a picture of one of an ad that I think was like from a couple years ago, like 2008 or something like that. It was an ad for Estee Lauder. And basically, when I was doing research, this picture came up because they were saying how when you see a Black person in the media, you see a Black model or anything like that, more times she's portrayed to have these Eurocentric beauty standards. So in this image, you can see that she has straight hair. You can see that she looks very similar to the white model, but that's not maybe a whole representation of Black people, right? So even when myself as a Black person will go and see this ad, I wouldn't be able to more so relate, or I wouldn't be able to connect because she looks like me, she has the same skin tone as me, but does she really look like me? You know, or is she trying to portray something, or is she trying to portray a standard of beauty that is considered to be the Eurocentric beauty standards? And that's why we're talking about this, because it is harmful for us, like especially young girls growing up, to always see this in the media, always see Black girls with straight hair, right? How does that happen? I remember when I was younger, and me and my sister were growing up, we would always want straight hair. Like I was so mad at my mom. I was like, Mom, why couldn't you just marry a white guy and give me some nice curls? Like why have this nappy stuff on my head? Like I was so mad. Like when I was younger, I was so mad and I couldn't figure out why I was so mad and where this originally came from. Like why did I originally have this thought that my hair wasn't pretty or my hair wasn't nice because it was curly, right? And growing up, me and my sister, we would take towels or long shirts and we would put them on our head and pretend that we had long, straight hair, like our white classmates did, because we wanted to look like them. We wanted to be them. I remember also wanting to have lighter skin, right? I grew up in an area that wasn't really as diverse. We had a lot of white people going to my school. So I would look at them and I would often compare myself to them, like the guys always go for the light skinned girl. The guys always go for the girl that's thin, right? So I had this image in my head that I wasn't beautiful because I wasn't seeing beauty. I wasn't seeing Black beauty for what it is. And it wasn't shown to me anywhere in the media. It wasn't shown online. It wasn't shown even in person. It wasn't taught in schools or anything like that. So I grew up with this idea of like, I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't good enough because I was Black, because I had curly hair, because I looked different than everybody else, right? And that's why we're talking about this, because it can be traumatic and it can be harmful to those of the Black woman. Because what happens, Because what happens is then we try to fit in to these Eurocentric beauty standards, right? So I want to ask you guys, do you remember or have you ever tried to do anything to fit into these Eurocentric beauty standards? And what have you done to try to fit into these beauty standards?
Oh, yes, I straightened my hair, put perm in my hair, or use even special hair stuff to make my hair look straight.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember the perm days. I permed my hair as well. My 8th grade graduation, I was so excited to have straight hair. It didn't move much, but it was still straight, and I was okay with that. Let's see, I see in the comments here, we got relaxer, which is, oh yes. Permed your hair because it was a normal. And my father used a clothing iron on your hair. Oh my goodness. But yeah, see, so we did all try to do things to fit into this Eurocentric beauty standard, but the question is why, right? Like, why was this pushed on us? Why was this pushed on us for us to feel like we need to look a certain type of way and we couldn't feel comfortable enough to wear our own natural hair to school? So I ask you a question. Okay, so I want us to take a look at this image on the screen here. And there's some wordings on here, right? Some questionings. What do you guys think of when you see this image? What comes to mind? Can you relate to anything on here? So some questions that are asked is, where are you from? Let's see, is that your natural hair? I'd kill for your lips. Team light skin. Permed because it was a norm.
I think one thing that comes to my mind, like looking at this picture, is like just the length thing, like especially like striving for like when your hair is natural to have like a certain length. Thankfully, like I've learned that I'm trying to process that our hair grows outwards. It's not gonna grow down, and things like that, and just kind of changing my perspective that it is growing, but constantly struggling, like pulling your hair to make, does it reach the back of your the middle of your back and stuff like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate as well, especially growing up. I didn't have a big afro, right? So I struggle with that as well. It's like, okay, I see all these girls, I see my friends. As I got older now into like middle school, I would see these Black girls with like some really like nice, full, thick afros. And I was like, damn, if I could at least have that, right? It was always, if I could at least have this, if I could at least have that, it would make me feel better. But no, it doesn't always make you feel better. Like, it doesn't. And we have to try to embrace, or we aim to embrace our natural selves, right? And embrace ourselves in our own skin, so that way we feel comfortable enough to go out into public with our natural hair if we need to, right? Things are transferring with the nice and school. Okay, so I see this one in the comment section. It says, this discussion brings back trauma for me. I went through nursing school with nappy hair and received a very low grade for dress and attire. So that is horrible to hear. I'm so sorry that you went through that. And unfortunately, that is, it's not surprising, like, for me to hear, like, sadly, it's not surprising. When we were doing research on this topic, I seen that a statistic was that Black women are more likely to get hired on jobs if they go to the interview with straight hair. And if they wear their natural hair, they're less likely to get hired. So that's a problem within our system, right? I've seen videos of little Black boys getting their dreads cut off in school in order to play on sports teams and things like that. So it's like, why is this a narrative that our hair defines us as a person, right? Why is it that my hair makes you think that I'm not professional? even though like this is my natural hair state. It's healthy. Let's see
And I
what else
still,
we have. Go ahead.
I agree with you. Like I still hear that like they're being out like depending on who's interviewing you, like should I straighten my hair? Should I do my hair? Get my hair done quickly before the interview? Like those stories are still out there. It's like time hasn't changed.
Yeah, no, you're right. Time has not changed. I remember when I was going for my interview, I was scared to rock box braids. I was like, is this too out there? Like, should I just get a weave and straight hair and call it a day? Like, I was scared to rock box braids, even though that was my natural self, right? Like that's a protective style that I do to protect my hair. It's nice. I like it. It makes me feel good. But yeah, I'm worried about what other people are going to think and if I'm going to get the job or not, because I do look a certain type of way. A friend of mine took out her braids a week after getting them in so she could put on a wig for her med school interviews. Yes, that is so relatable, right? Like I was just speaking about how I was stressing about whether or not I should take out my braids and just get a straight weave because I felt like I would have more of a chance. Ignorance from lots of people. Yes, a lot of people are ignorant, right? So when I look at this image, I see a battle, right? It's like, it's always going to be a lose-lose situation, right? So we have a comment on top here. Why don't you do something to your hair? And then on the other side, it says, when I see you, I don't see black. And then another question is that your natural hair? So if it's coming from all sides, whether you rock your natural hair, right? Whether you straighten your hair or do something to your hair to change it, to try to fit into the societal norms, you're still always going to get questioned on it. So what can we do as Black people, as Black women, to negate ourselves in these thoughts, right? Like we don't want to think like this. We want to be able to go outside and feel comfortable in our own skin. If I don't want to do my hair one week and come to work with my afro, I should feel comfortable to do that, right? So how can we get to that place? That's what we're going to talk about now. How can we get to a place of feeling confident and being able to know that we are beautiful within our own ways, right? And we don't have to always try to fit into these beauty standards because they're unrealistic for us, really. Like we're perming our hair, we're putting chemical damage to our hair to make it straight so that way we feel more comfortable in this world society. But that's not fair to us. That's not fair to us as a people, right? We're kind of losing our sense of identity. So moving on. Okay, so here's another image of what like the effects of beauty standards can do on Black women and why it's such an important thing for us to try to steer away from these thoughts, right? So you see a Black woman, she's looking into the mirror and you see these sticky notes on the side and it's kind of like her thoughts, right? So she's thinking, oh, I wish I had light eyes. She's thinking my hair, I wish it was straight. My nose, I wish it was smaller, right? Or my lips, they're quite big. I wish they were a little bit smaller. But it's like, why are we thinking like this? Because what we see, right? When we think of our realistic body and we can see our body, and then we have an image or an ideal body in our head, and those two don't match, that can create some health issues for us, right? That can create lots of trauma, lots of either health issues such as eating disorders, mood disorders, anxiety, even depression if it gets too far, right? So when we look at this image, I want to kind of think about what we can do so that way we don't have to feel like this. So that way we don't look in the mirror and we're thinking of this constantly. So that way when we look in the mirror, we can appreciate our features and appreciate our differences. And I see Lydia has their hand raised. You can go ahead.
Hello, yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So what do you think about, because like a couple of years ago, around like 2016, 2017, it was like a huge movement on like natural hair on social media especially. And now I feel like it's kind of dying down and people are saying, a lot of Black women are saying, I'm tired of like going my natural hair and I feel like I'm getting bullied for perming my hair again. So is it still considered being following a Eurocentric beauty standard if you're perming your hair just because you want to perm it and you just don't have the energy to take care of your natural hair like in its natural state?
No, I completely understand where you're coming from. So for me, for example, my hair is always in braids, right? I barely rock my natural hair like out because it's a lot to deal with. I agree, it is a lot to deal with. But I think that's where it becomes a choice, right? So doing something because I want to, because I feel like it's benefiting me, versus doing something because I feel like it's benefiting others, right? So if you feel like perming your hair is benefiting yourself, then that's something you're doing for yourself, right? You're not necessarily putting yourself into these beauty standards because you feel like you need to have straight hair in order to look pretty, or you feel like you need to have straight hair in order to get the job. For you, if that's a maintenance thing, that's a maintenance thing, and I completely understand. You know, Black hair is hard. Like, I didn't grow up knowing how to take care of my hair, how to treat my hair. My mom never, like, she wasn't that involved with my hair and like helping me, like, you know what I mean? She helped me get the perms because it was easier for her as well. Right. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't think that would fit into necessarily trying to fit into the Eurocentric beauty standards, but it's more so doing something for yourself to make yourself feel better. And I think that's kind of where we want to draw the line, right? Thank you for that question, though.
Can I add?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to that comment and to your response as well. Like, I think saying that our hair is hard to do is a part of like what we've been told as well. Like, I would say that I agree with the part where it's your choice as long as it's not the choice of it's not, as long as it's not for the benefit of others. But I really feel like us constantly saying or hearing from hairdressers like, oh, your hair is so hard to deal with, like we can't manage. Like, we were in a part like a time of our lives like centuries ago, prior to slavery, during slavery, where we did our hair and we even did it in the most technical ways imaginable, for tradition wise, for our own selves. I feel like there was a narrative where, of course, there was a certain period of time where media was relax or this and straighten your hair this, but there was a time prior to that where we were rocking our hair and we were managing it just fine. So I feel like even saying stuff our hair is really hard to deal with, everyone's I feel like
everyone has.
Yeah, everyone has difficulty. I don't want to say everyone, but I don't want to get to the everyone thing, but a lot of people have challenges with their hair, even when it comes with hair loss and this and that. So I'm just I feel like we should really move from the idea of our hair is difficult to deal with, but I totally understand maintenance.
No, thank you for that, because you're so right? I think I always, and again, this is a learning process, is we're here to learn, we're here to grow, right? So I think even with you saying that helped me, because it's you know what, even though I might think, okay, my hair is hard to deal with, it's not as hard to I understand what you're saying. It's not a hard thing to deal with. People have done it from years, right? And my mom has done hairstyles on herself for years, and I've seen her deal with her hair and things like that, right? I think I was never really given the tools, I guess, or I was never really taught how I could manage my hair in an effective way. So that's why, to me, it seems like, oh, my hair is just so hard to do, so I'd rather not deal with it at all instead of learning how to take care of my hair. So I do definitely thank you for that comment, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. We do have to stay away from that narrative with, oh, my hair is just hard to do, because it might be a challenge, might be a struggle, but there's ways that we can do our hair, right? We can rock our natural hair in many different ways. So I thank you for that. Okay, moving on, because we're kind of pressed for time. we're going to talk about or get into how we can cope with these traumas, right? So we talked about Black identity, and then we talked about the Eurocentric kind of beauty standards and how we can, so now we're going to talk about how we can cope with those. So we're going to start with acknowledging the trauma. So we talked about Black identity and about Eurocentric beauty standards, but with all traumas that we might face, right, we have to acknowledge the fact that we are going through traumas. So that's why we got to remember that race-based traumatic stress, we got to remember that definition, because certain things that we might be going through in our lives, we might not realize that it's actually due to trauma. Right? So that's why we have to acknowledge the trauma and know that, okay, this is affecting me in a way, but why is it affecting me in a way? Right? Then we got to find support. So find support in community, right? Like this, we're all coming together here, sharing our experiences, sharing our ideas, our opinions, right? So we can find support in others, and then take action, right? So it's like, okay, I know I'm going through a traumatic experience, or I know I'm dealing with race-based trauma. I found support. Now it's time to take action. What are you going to do to help better yourself and to help heal from the trauma that you're going through, you've been going through, right? So what are you going to do? Another big one is unplug from social media, even all types of interactions. Maybe if you need to, like I find myself needing to take space a lot of times so I can deal with things on my own and then come back to a place of, okay, now I'm able to talk to people and share my ideas and share what I'm kind of going through. So that's a good one as well. Another one would be to prioritize self-care. And this one is huge, especially when we're talking about the hair and everything, right? So I think if we spend more time prioritizing our self-care, making ourselves feel better, right? Like we can take bubble baths, we can do face masks, we can do one of the activities that we said we enjoy doing earlier, right? We can do things to help ourselves to fuel ourselves, to make ourselves feel better, right? And remain hopeful. Like even though we are living in a society where we might not feel like we fit in, or we might feel like we have all these things against us, right? We got to remain hopeful that things will change, and us getting together and talking in communities and just learning how to grow and deal with ourselves, that we can then in turn help our youth and the people that we deal with and we work with, right? We remain hopeful, like things will change, we can improve, and ourselves too, we can improve ourselves in ourselves. We might have a negative thought, but we can change that and make it positive. And then another thing would be to do is to seek professional help. This is highly recommended because a lot of the times in the Black community, I will say it's kind of seen as like a taboo, like to go to therapy or like, you know, like it's a lot of times seen that people might not believe in that, or like you feel a certain type of way to express, okay, I need help, right? To someone. Like growing up, I was never taught that talking to people about your problems was okay. I was taught what stays at home happens at home. So I kind of kept everything inside, kept everything to myself, and didn't seek that extra help that I truly needed in order for myself to grow and to deal with these things that I'm going through and to heal through certain traumas that I haven't dealt with before, right? So that's kind of a major one. And going on, there's some resources for professional help with race-based trauma, with racial trauma. So we got Taboo, of course, on here. And their information is, their website and phone number is on there. So you guys can feel free to take a screenshot, take a picture. There's Black Youth Helpline. They have a helpline for Black youth. We can call in, talk about your issues or anything that you're going through as well. And then we got some more. We got Caribbean, African, Canadian Social Services. They kind of do things geared toward Black youth and Black mental health as well, and they have counseling services. And then as well as Tropicana, we have culturally appropriate counseling. So we have counseling for Black youth, right? Black counselors, someone that we feel like can relate to us, right? Where we can go to. And that kind of wraps up our presentation on race-based trauma and how we can cope and how we can manage. So if you have any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to ask.
Thanks so much, Janelle and O'Shea. I do have a question. And again, anyone, if you have any questions in the chat, please feel free to send them or unmute and they'd be happy to answer. Janelle and O'Shea, this is for either of you, although it relates a little bit more to O'Shea's presentation in terms of making sure Black people aren't defined as a monolith. Something that I find myself like doing a lot is if I'm ever traveling back home, like I'm from South Sudan, which is in Africa, I find myself going, oh, I'm going to Africa. I won't say the specific country. And some people have, inquire like, okay, well, say the country in Africa. Africa is not a country. And obviously I know that because I'm African, but I find that Black people kind of identify more collectively by saying either, oh, I'm Black, or I'm African, or I'm Caribbean. We know where we come from, whether it's the country or the city or wherever, but we identify as like a collective. So does identifying as a collective, like for example, saying I'm African, contribute to Black people being seen as a monolith and being expected to act in certain ways, despite myself being like African or Black and knowing what I'm talking about? Or is it something that should be okay?
Yeah, I think like personally, if someone were to ask me, I would more often say I'm have Jamaican roots, just because like even within the past like 3-4 years with a lot of the like heightened racial tension that's going around in the world, like it caused me to do some like interior looking even into background of where my dad came from, some of the tribes that he came from in Jamaica, because he was born, raised Westmoreland, all of that stuff. And by diving in a little bit deeper in the cultural roots that I had, I found a sense of kind of like pride and individualism in kind of sharing that experience with other people. So I tend, or I'll try a lot more to lean more towards, hey, like I have Jamaican roots as well as Eastern European and all of that stuff in a lot of specific social settings, more with people that probably wouldn't identify as Black, Caribbean, or African in those contexts, just to kind of give a little bit more clarity on the individualism that we have. More in social settings where people may identify as Caribbean, Black, or African, I'll probably lean more just towards just saying Black or identifying as Black in those settings. But I don't feel like, to kind of like loop back and kind of answer your question, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question, more or less of what you feel the most comfortable with and how you would better identify. Like I always enjoy kind of being able to jump into those conversations of my cultural roots, my heritage, and all of that stuff. So any kind of opportunity I can get to do that, I'll kind of stick a foot out there for that.
Awesome, thank you. That helps a lot. We have another question here from Mary, and I think this is for the both of you. Have either of you been successful in moving away from the stereotypes? I know, O'Shea, you mentioned that you stopped those sports, but then actually you were able to come back, which is awesome. So maybe if you want to elaborate more on that, and then Janelle as well, touch on your own experience perhaps with the hair or Eurocentric beauty standards and how you kind of found beauty in your own Blackness.
You want to go first, Janelle?
Sure. So yeah, I think it's a process, right? I'm not gonna say 100% I'm there yet, because I'm not, right? I'm still trying to be confident in myself and who I am as a person, right? Especially like when we're talking about Black identity. Growing up, I wouldn't necessarily fit into that box either of like the Black identity, right? Like of what people would say. So I kind of was struggling with that as well. Like, do I fit into this community? Like I'm Black, like I'm Black, but do I really fit in? Like I don't like the same things, or I'm not into the same things. But I kind of got away from that narrative of thinking of myself like that and realized like, I'm an individual at the end of the day. I'm an individual and I have Black roots, and that makes me amazing. But that doesn't mean that I can't connect with other Black people because I feel a certain type of way, or I feel like I'm not Black enough because I don't know certain things or I haven't gone through certain things, right? So it's a process. It is a process. And then I think again with even like the beauty standards, like seeing it every day, seeing it in social media, like it's hard, right? To just all of a sudden just stop thinking a certain type of way when you've been taught to think like that for like all of your life, right? And only now at this age realizing that I shouldn't be thinking like that, right? And what I would want for my future generation to think like it's a process, right? So I'm on the journey to healing, and I'm on the journey to being comfortable in myself and being comfortable in my skin and who I'm in and the decisions and the choices that I make. So I guess long answer short, it's a process, and I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to deal with it. I'm trying to heal from it. And I'm learning. Every day is a learning process. Like I learned a lot today, even just doing this presentation, right? So that's all I can say is continue to learn, continue to heal, continue to see what you can do to kind of better yourself and make yourself feel comfortable in the skin that you're in.
Yeah, kind of just to tie off what Janelle said. I think in terms of stereotypes, like it's a tough one where like it always kind of is a journey. I think for the most part, I think I have found a lot of healing in a lot of the mentality that I may have taken in terms of like I do play basketball like regularly now, but I play it because I enjoy it. I don't play it because I'm searching for a Black image. I play golf because I enjoy it, and it's one of those things where I'm able to spend time with my dad because he enjoys golf. So I look at it as kind of like this is a message to a mean. When it comes to stereotypes, I think the unfortunate part, and Janelle really touched on this, of like it being a process. It is a journey rather than a destination, at least the way I look at it, because when you're dealing with stereotypes and when you're dealing with a lot of this stuff, at least in a lot of personal experiences with me, is I can't control other people. And a reality that I have to face is that I do have a family that is split, where my mom's side is white and my dad's side is Black. And unfortunately, a lot of my mom's side still tend to hold a lot of racially motivated beliefs, where they have a lot of negative perceptions on what Black people do, what they say, and all of that stuff. And they look towards myself and some of my siblings as that quote unquote monolith, where we're able to kind of engage in a lot of those conversations and kind of have healthy conversations. But there still is a toll that plays, where after that conversation, where I may talk to some trusted people around me, where it still frustrates me that my own family still kind of have these viewpoints. And then on the opposite side, of even on my dad's side, kind of having those conversations and it frustrating me of why don't they see me the same way I see myself, or why don't they see me the same way my dad sees myself. And that, like, my dad is your brother, your uncle, like he is family to you. So kind of having that same perception, it's still something that's still I'm still in process of talking with people through. And just like I said, and kind of just really going back to that, is really understanding that this idea of stereotypes and kind of forming that Black identity is more of a journey that we have to learn to enjoy the journey rather than fixated on the destination, and really being hopeful that something will really change. But in terms of kind of moving away from those stereotypes, I think for myself personally, I have, but a lot of those stereotypes will still in some respects be put on me by other people, where I have to learn to manage and kind of have conversations around with.
Thanks so much, Janelle and O'Shea. Mary, I hope that answers your question. It seems like the common theme here is that they're not there yet, but they're working towards it, which seems to be the most important thing throughout all this, all the stereotypes, all the projections that come from being a Black person. One, acknowledging them, and two, taking the steps to work through them and to make sure that we don't internalize them. So thanks so much, Janelle and O'Shea, for actually being vulnerable and sharing these things. I know that it can't be easy, but it actually helps a lot of people. And I hope that everyone's taken away something in terms of the presentation today to either reflect on, to share with other people, or to just spread the knowledge in general. So that is all the time that we do have for today. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's take some time to show O'Shea and Janelle some love for the amazing presentation today and the knowledge that they dropped. Definitely healing through traumas is something that as Black people will be facing for quite a bit of our lives. And just to know that we have people like this that go out of their way to share this information with us is amazing. So drop an emoji, a heart, I don't know what it's called, the birthday balloons, whatever it is, to just show them some love. And again, thank you so much for joining us for Black Mental Health Week. We do have 2 more Lunch and Learn sessions tomorrow and Thursday. Feel free to join us as well. But that is everything for today. So have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
You.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think we're just waiting for. Okay, I think we're good. That was it. Thanks so much, Janelle, O'Shea. You guys were amazing. Killed the session. Actually, I was really in it too. I think you see me in the chat going off, but
You want to stop the recording? Sorry.
did I not? Oh shoot. Oh my God.